Hi, Jocelyn. This is Dr. Fitz. I just wanted to give you a little bit of run through your CBA with you really quickly. And then if you have any other questions, please let me know. I just wanted to mention that I did resolve the comments and questions that I had here related to the focus of your lesson of your unit plan. So I had asked if you were going to include listening and speaking, or listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and you mentioned that you were probably going to focus on listening and speaking. If you change your mind and you want to focus on all four of your language skills, or either way, I believe that it would be useful, given that you're going to be focusing on language production, that when you're writing your learning targets, you make mention of which language skills the kids are going to be using. So, for example, I can tell the difference between two sports in Spanish verbally and in writing, or you could just even put in parentheses even the letters, L for listening, R for reading, W for writing, S for speaking. And that way I kind of know, because I gave you kind of too many comments here, and I apologize for that, but it's because if you're either way meant, the thing with foreign language, or I know Spanish is not a foreign language, it's a US language, but the thing with languages in general is you are always sort of assessing skills as well. And so if you're wanting students to, especially with this target, because you're looking for fluency, it sounds like, because they want kids to be using memorized words and phrases, that makes me think about fluency. And so that's kind of a skill, just that recall, that fluency piece. So that's really performance assessment, which is what you have in your summative, which is great. But I think a lot of these need to have performance assessment as well, and or personal communication, if not performance assessment, because you're probably, especially with the younger kids, even with anyone, older, younger, you're always going to want to connect the verbal skills with any reading and writing that you do. So I would recommend, with your learning targets, make note of which language skill you're focusing on, and then include either performance assessment or personal communication pretty much for every single one. And some of your targets, the way you wrote them, they don't match the assessment method. So review page 94 in our text for that. Okay, so part one looks great. You have a good explanation here. Part two is very thorough. You have really unpacked your content thoroughly. You really focused on sports, which is fine. Like, you could have chosen a different familiar topic to focus on, but I think you did a great job here. This part with skill, these that you wrote here are more like instructional objectives, and your skills would probably be a little bit more narrow, quite frankly, the way that our authors have defined them. Just so you know, you don't have to revise this, but just so you know. Okay, I don't want to spend too long. I have some comments here. You can just read them over and, like I said, clarify any of that, and then you can delete all this good stuff. Down here, I thought you did a very nice job describing your summative assessment idea. One thing that I was thinking that you might want to think about with second graders, you might want to have them do a short presentation, but I bet you could even assess them if they were working with a small group, or if they had to present to a partner, or if they had to present in a small group. So just something to think about. I might revise a little bit your wording here just because I don't think the kids are really conjugating verbs because they're using memorized chunks of language. And they don't have to necessarily, like if I say me gusta, I don't necessarily have to change my verb up too much. So I don't know if it's conjugation per se. And also with the I guess I think you explained this clearly, that you want kids to talk about how they feel when they play sports or when they win or lose, or if they emotions that they get when they play sports, which I think is a great idea. But you don't really have a lot of learning targets related to the emotions piece. So just something to think about. You want to really make sure that your assessment pieces, whether they be summative or formative, focus on those learning targets, and that is what you're assessing. So here in your blueprint, in these rows, you're going to put the learning targets that you're going to assess, and those are the same ones that you already wrote in part 3. So they don't have to be all of them, but you just pick out the ones that you think you'll be assessing via your performance assessment, and you just copy and paste them down here. So you currently have the clarifying objectives, so you want the learning targets that are in your assessment and how much they'll be weighted. You want to get rid of this selected response here because you're doing a performance assessment, so it's just going to be performance assessment. And then in your description here, you want a description. This is fine. You want a description for the students. So, you know, remember when we did that raft activity? I don't know that you submitted one. So here you want to put it like towards second graders. So imagine, you know, give them a scenario, give them a purpose of why they're doing this, and really write the task in a way that they can understand. You know, look back at chapter 7. They have a lot of good suggestions for the task and for the rubric. And also for the rubric, do some Googling for world language rubrics, and that will help you. Criteria, I apologize for changing this. You can change it however you want, but the criteria, they need to be like specific names of like the things that you're looking for. So you want this one, I thought, oh, you want to know, well, this might be, instead of topic focus, this might be like organization or something. And then this might be the content knowledge, and then this is verb usage or whatever you want. So then these things inside of here, these are the descriptors, and these are your levels. One note, like if you want to include something like organization, that's great, but it should not count towards a score, because remember the summative assessment and the grade is going towards the learning targets and not other stuff. So just keep that in mind. And then definitely include directions for the teacher, and this would be like things like, how is the teacher going to teach the kids how to use the rubric? How much time will the teacher give for the kids to prepare? What kinds of materials will you give to help the kids prepare for their presentation? So really describe how the task will be administered and how the task will be assessed. Finally, in your formative assessment plan, your formative assessment plan needs to show how you are assessing all of your learning targets. So both how you're preparing them to do well on the summative assessment, as well as how you will assess those other learning targets that aren't necessarily going to be assessed in your summative. One thing that I noticed here, I thought you had really nice ideas here. This second one about writing a short story, I would revise or remove that and add some other ideas, because you do not have any writing targets right now. And you have a lot of stuff in here that's not in your learning targets. So you would either have to revise your learning targets or revise this idea so it matches your learning targets. So bottom line, make sure that your formative assessment is helping the kids and you kind of track their progress towards mastery on the learning targets you wrote in part 3. Okay, that's 10 minutes. That's more than enough of your time, and I've got to go to bed. And so I hope this helped. If you've got questions, I'm more than happy to meet with you via Zoom or